Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي ربنا زدنا علما. كتاب الحيض باب الصفرة والكدرة في غير أيام الحيض. الصفرة yellowish discharge والكدرة brownish discharge في غير أيام الحيض in not the days of hayd, meaning outside the days of hayd, outside the regular period. If a woman sees yellowish discharge or brownish discharge, then what is that? What is the ruling concerning that? Is that considered period? Is that considered discharge? Should a woman pray? Should she not pray? Does she have to do wudu before every prayer? Is she going to deal with it like hayd, like istihada, or like tuhur? Basically, that's the question. حدثنا قتيبة بن سعيد قال حدثنا إسماعيل عن أيوب عن محمد عن عطية. عطية, she narrated, قالت, she said, كنا, we used to, لا نعد, we would not count, meaning we would not consider al-kudrata, the brownish discharge, was sufrata, and the yellowish discharge, shay'an, anything. Meaning we would not consider it anything at all. In other words, they would not bother to do fresh wudu before every prayer. They would not treat it like menstrual blood. They just consider it like normal vaginal discharge. So basically, if this discharge, color discharge, is outside the time of hayd, then it will be ignored. Meaning a woman does not need to pay any attention to it. So for example, a woman had her regular period, 7 days. She took a bath, she started praying, and she took a bath after she saw qussatul bayda, or she saw dryness. So she started praying. Now after 2 days, she sees her discharge is a little dark in color. It's not blood, but it's dark in color. So what should she do? What should she do? Ignore that. She doesn't need to treat it like istihada, so she doesn't need to do fresh wudu before every prayer. Does she have to take a bath? Meaning it's not hayd. When it is seen outside the regular days of hayd. And remember, this is yellowish and brownish discharge. We're not talking about blood. We're not talking about spotting. This is color discharge. Now, if the sufra kudra is attached to the days of hayd, or within the days of hayd, then what is it? It is hayd. And attached to the days of hayd, before or after, what's the condition? That it has to be attached. Meaning there should be no gap of purity in the middle. Alright? And the second condition is that it should not be for a very long time. Meaning if she has color discharge, 2, 3 days, 4 days prior to when the bleeding actually begins, then it will be considered hayd. Likewise, after the bleeding ends, it's not really that heavy, and it's just color discharge, and attached to the time of hayd, let's say 2 days, 1 day, then it will be considered hayd as well. But if it's outside, detached, then it is not hayd. Outside the days of hayd. Her regular cycle. Okay, it could be 2 days, it could be 3 days, it could be 10 days, it could be 12 days. Bab irq al-istihadati. Irq, a blood vessel of al-istihada, of false menstruation. So basically, the blood vessel, meaning a blood vessel, is the cause of istihada. In other words, the source of hayd is different from that of istihada. And what could it be? The source of istihada? Could be many reasons. Sometimes some women have uterine fibroids, or sometimes endometriosis and cysts also. Likewise, a woman may have an IUD inserted. So there could be various reasons behind such bleeding. But the point is that this bleeding is not hayd. حدثنا إبراهيم بن المنذر قال حدثنا معن قال حدثني ابن أبي ذئب عن ابن شهاب عن عروة وعن عمرة عن عائشة. Amra was the daughter of Abdurrahman, the brother of Aisha radiallahu anha. So basically, she was her niece. So she narrated from her aunt, Aisha radiallahu anha, who was Zawj Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, that Anna Habibata, that Habiba radiallahu anha, who was the sister of Zainab radiallahu anha, the wife of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and Habiba had married Abdurrahman bin Auf. Ustuhidat, she had istihada for how long? 7 sinin, for 7 years. So for 7 years she had istihada. She was constantly bleeding. Sometimes a lot, sometimes a little, with just a day or two of tuhur in the middle. She had this problem for 7 years. فَسَأَلَتْ رَسُولَ اللَّهِ صَلَى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمْ عَنْ ذَلِكَ. So she asked the Prophet ﷺ about this. فَأَمَرَهَا. So he ordered her أَن تَغْتَسِلَ, that she should take a bath. Meaning that she should purify herself and start praying. فَقَالَ. So he said, هَذَا عِرْقٌ, that the source of this bleeding is عِرْقٌ, a blood vessel. Meaning this is not hayd. فَكَانَتْ. So how did she interpret the command of the Prophet ﷺ? That she used to تَغْتَسِلُ, she would take a bath لِكُلِّ صَلَاةٍ, for every prayer. Now, this was her own action. The Prophet ﷺ, his instruction was what? تَغْتَسِل, that she should take a bath. And that can be understood in a number of ways. It can be understood as take a bath, start praying. You are clean. It can be understood as just wash your private part before you pray. And it can also be understood as take a bath, that wash yourself, meaning do wudu before every prayer. But she understood it as taking a bath, and she had this habit that before every prayer she would take a bath. And because of her action, and we don't know if this was approved by the Prophet ﷺ, Aisha radhiyallahu anha is narrating this, right? So anyway, the point is that some scholars, they said that based on this, it can, it's said that it is preferable for a woman who is having istihada, that she can join the prayers and take a bath. So for example, Zuhr, Asr, she can join, take a bath, and pray together. Likewise, Maghrib, Isha, she can join, take a bath, and then pray them. So she can do that. However, this can impose a lot of difficulty upon a woman. So this is the reason why the majority view is what? That she just needs to do wudu before praying. And in fact, other scholars have said that even fresh wudu is not required, because they did not consider the blood of istihada to be najis, or you can say as something that nullifies wudu. But you can say that the majority opinion is what? The majority opinion is do wudu. So for example, from the time that Zuhr begins until the time that Asr ends, any time in that, within that period of time, any time that a woman finds convenient, she can take a bath and she can pray both Zuhr and Asr together. Likewise, from the time that Maghrib begins until Isha ends, she has that whole window. In that window, she can take a bath any time and pray both of them together. This is why, like I said, majority opinion is what? Based on other evidences, what do we see? That the more common practice was that doing wudu for every prayer. And the instruction of the Prophet ﷺ, فَأَمَرَهَا أَن تَغْتَسِلَ, it can be understood like that as well. Now, we have read many things about hayd. And I would like to make this clear for all of us, so that everything that we've studied so far doesn't confuse us more, but rather brings more clarity, so that if we ever face a problem, we know how to analyze, and figure out what kind of bleeding it is, what the state is, so that we can worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accordingly. And if someone else has a problem also, we can help them. So I would like to summarize some important points concerning hayd. Now you see this flowchart that I made on the board? What do you see? This is basically the 4 kinds of states that a woman can have. First is dryness. Nothing. No discharge, absolute dryness. When a woman has complete dryness, that is a sign of tuhur. That is a sign of tuhur. Secondly, qussatul bayda. What does that mean? Clear discharge. White discharge. Clear. That also is a sign of tuhur. Thirdly, sufra and kudra. Yellowish, brownish discharge. Now this can be either tuhur or it can be hayd. When is it tuhur? When it's outside the time of hayd. When is it hayd? When it's in that window or it is joined with hayd. Then it will be considered hayd. The 4th thing is the blood, which is the most complicated. And this blood can be a little or a lot. So we're not talking about heavy bleeding. We're not talking only heavy bleeding, or we're not talking about only spotting. We're talking about any kind of bleeding. So any blood that a woman sees coming out from her vagina, that is considered what? Dam. Now this dam is of 3 types. Firstly, hayd. It could be hayd. Secondly, it could be istihada. And thirdly, it could be nifas. And remember, it can be a little, it can be a lot. Now when is it hayd? The first question, when is blood hayd? When it comes in the habit days, the aada, when it has certain characteristics, then it is hayd. The basic principle, remember, is that every time a woman sees natural blood for which there is no cause, such as an injury and the like, then it is menstrual blood. Ibn Taymiyyah, he said, the basic principle concerning everything that comes out of the womb, meaning every kind of blood, is that it is menses, unless there is evidence to show that it is istihada. Unless there is evidence to show that it is istihada. So anytime a woman sees blood, what will that be? Hayd. Unless there is a reason for you to think that it is istihada. Now, secondly is istihada. When is istihada? When will blood be considered istihada? Because of two reasons. First of all, when it is a prolonged period, continuous bleeding. Because remember that your regular cycle can also change. So when it is a prolonged period, and secondly, which is more important, is the difference in the characteristics of the blood. The difference in the characteristics of the blood. To summarize, to review again, the characteristics of the blood of hayd, what are they? That the blood is darker in color. The texture is different, it's thicker actually. Thirdly, it has a smell. And fourth, some scholars have also said the blood of hayd does not clot. The blood of hayd does not clot. Some scholars have also said that. But the blood of istihada, it clots. For example, in menopause, many women complain of this, that they're bleeding 2-3 weeks and they're having literally clots coming out. So that is a sign, is an evidence that it is not. Now regular small clots, if it's a habit of a woman to have that in her period, then it is considered her period. But if it's blood that is coming out and clotting immediately or coming out in the form of big clots, then that will be considered as istihada. Okay? Now, inshallah, we'll go more into the details of hayd and istihada with a few more points, but before we continue, the last point, which is of nifas. When is it nifas? After childbirth. So basically, the main issue is hayd and istihada. Everything else is clear? Okay. Now, when it comes to hayd, remember that the beginning and ending of hayd for each woman is different. The way it begins, the way it ends for each woman is different. For some it begins with bleeding, for others it begins with color discharge and ends in the same way as well. Another important point is that there is no minimum or maximum number of days for hayd or for tuhur. Okay? There is no minimum or maximum number of days for hayd or for tuhur. What does hayd mean? Period. And tuhur, the period of purity, in the middle. Hayd depends on the habit of every woman and the characteristics of the blood. Ibn Taymiyyah, he said, with regards to menstruation, Allah has attached numerous rulings to it in the Quran and Sunnah. But He did not state the shortest or longest length, or the length of the period of tahara between two menstrual periods, even though the need to know that exists. When there is a need that people need to know about something, then Allah has informed of it. Isn't that so? When He did not inform of it, that means that there is no minimum or maximum number of days for hayd or for tuhur. He said some of the scholars defined a maximum and minimum, but they differed concerning that. Some scholars said minimum is 1 day. Some scholars said maximum is 10 days. Other scholars said maximum is 15 days. Some scholars even said maximum is 30 days. So they differed concerning that. Some stated a maximum length without defining a minimum. And the third view is the most correct, which states that there is no minimum or maximum. Why? Because every woman is different. And throughout her life, a woman is going through different stages. So where she had a very regular cycle, all of a sudden that changed. Where everything was fine before baby, after baby, everything changed. For 30, 40 years, a woman was fine. As she enters into menopause, everything goes haywire. So this is the reason why there is no minimum or maximum that has been specified. Likewise, every woman's body is different. Every place that women live, the kind of diet they eat, the kind of climate they're exposed to, the kind of physical work that they're exposed to, even that has an effect on their period. Alright, so this is the reason why the stronger opinion is that there is no minimum or maximum. So for example, a woman can have her period for 4 days, and that's a regular habit. A woman can have her period for 16 days, if that is a regular habit. As long as the characteristics are present, and that is a period, that is her habit, that is common amongst the women of her family or the women of that community, that will be considered hayd. Then, one more important thing is that a woman's verdict concerning the length and frequency of her bleeding is accepted. Meaning whatever a woman says about her period, the length of that, the frequency of that, it will be accepted as long as it is something not unusual. If it is unusual, a woman says, I have period for 16 days. Then what has to be seen? Family, statistics, right? That's what you have to see. Is it possible? If the doctors say, yes, it's possible, then it is her period. But if they say, no, it's not possible to menstruate for 16 days. Perhaps your menstruation is just 7 days and later on is just bleeding. Then in that case, it is not hayd. So every case is different basically. Every woman has to see herself. One more important thing that we must remember is that the length of the period may increase and decrease. It may come earlier or later. And this is normal. This is normal. The length of a period may increase, it may decrease. 1 month you have your period for 5 days. That's your regular habit. The next month your bleeding is not stopping and it looks like menstrual blood. You have your period for 7 days. So should you consider the last 2 days as the days of istihada? No. If it has the characteristics, all the signs are present, treat it as hayd. Likewise, you have your period for 7 days, for example. 1 month you bleed only for 4 days. And then qusat al-bayda, right? Clear discharge. So what are you supposed to do? Okay, you wait for 1 day, but clear discharge. Then you have to take a shower and you have to start praying. So you had your period only for 4 days that month. It is possible. Once she sees the white discharge, and because she's in that confusion that my habit is always 7 days. So she waits for 1 day. Okay, that's fine. But she should not wait for more than that. Because she should start praying, and if it comes back, for example, within 7 days, if she starts bleeding again, like let's say after 4 days she's clean, she waits for a couple of hours, and then she takes a bath, she starts praying. So now it is the 6th day. 6th day she sees some spotting, some bleeding. So can it be hayd? Yes, it can be, as long as its characteristics are present. So the length of the period may increase and decrease, and the period may come earlier or later. So your date can also change. Does it change? Of course, all the time. So it can come earlier or later. And the blood that comes out in these cases is considered to be menstrual blood. As long as, the characteristics are present and it is supposed to be period, then you will consider that to be the period. So once Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen, he was asked a question. There is a woman who had an IUD inserted. Before that procedure, her period was 7 days. But after that, her period increased to 10 days. Please note that on the 7th day, the bleeding decreases. Then on the 8th and 9th day, the bleeding gets worse. And then it stops after the 10th day. So he said she should carry on until she becomes pure. Meaning, she should wait until 10 days. Because now, because of what happened, her habit has changed. So your habit can change. Now, the end of the period, it is determined by what? By 2 things. Dryness, and secondly, qusat al-bayda, clear discharge. Why dryness? What's the evidence that that is also a sign of purity? Because basically, qusat al-bayda is what? That when you wipe, it comes back clean. So it comes back clean either because there's nothing on it or because whatever is on it is clear. So dryness is also a sign of purity. And a woman has to see what her habit is. If she is of those women who do have clear discharge, then she should wait to see it. Then she should not consider dryness to be the sign. That if a woman regularly sees clear discharge, then she should wait to see the clear discharge. But if she does not see it, some women don't have vaginal discharge at all, or very little. It's almost not there. So for her, what's the sign that her period has ended? Dryness. So basically, a woman has to be familiar of what happens with her. Another important point, that if a woman believes that her period has ended, she believes that her period has ended, and then she starts bleeding again. She saw that her period was as, normal, it ended, she saw the signs of purity, she took a bath, started praying, and she starts bleeding again. Let's say after 1 week, or after 2 weeks. Okay? Then, if the blood has the characteristics of menstrual blood, it is menstrual bleeding. Because remember, a woman can have menses even 3 times in 1 month. As long as it happens, as long as it's acceptable, as long as it's possible, she can have that. So if the characteristics are present, then it will be considered menstrual blood. Otherwise, if those characteristics are not present, then it will be istihada. If it's color discharge, then she should ignore that. Now, let me ask you a few questions. Let me present a few cases to you. A woman gave birth to a baby, and she did not have her period for 7 months. And then she saw blood, along with menstrual cramps, but only for 2 days. Before her baby was born, she would have period for 5 days. So these 2 days that she's bleeding, is it haid or not? How come? Characteristics are present. What are the signs? Cramps. That pain that she used to have always. That's a sign that this is her period. It came only 2 days. So what? The length of the days can change. The amount of bleeding can also change. Now, after 2 weeks, she starts bleeding again. And that also feels like a period. And she bleeds for 6 days. Is that haid? Yes. Why? Characteristics. Yes. 2 weeks doesn't matter because remember there's no limit to, there's no minimum maximum of tuhur even. Another question. A woman has her regular monthly cycle, her regular period every month for 6 days. She turned 49 and now she doesn't have her period at all. It's been 3 months, she hasn't bled. And now all of a sudden she starts bleeding and her bleeding is not stopping and she's been bleeding for 3 weeks. Heavy bleeding with clots. So what is that? Istihada. Alright? Why? What's the sign? It's the characteristics, right? And it's prolonged. It's just not ending. No, menopause is just a state in which your body is going to get out of the periods. So basically you bleed in different ways. You could have hayd and you could also have istihada. First few days, if she sees that the blood has the characteristics of hayd, then she will consider it hayd. But if it doesn't have the characteristics, it's just thin blood, it's just streaming out. And occasionally there are just big clots. Okay? And she doesn't have any pain, any signs of hayd, then in that case she will consider it to be istihada from the beginning. Yes, it doesn't have smell either. When you have a period, you know it's a period. Then, another question. A woman was taking birth control pills, and then she stopped taking them. And she had spotting for 3 days, that smelled a lot, a little bit of pain, but not really like her normal period. What is this? Hayd. Why? The smell is there, a little bit of pain is there. So the signs of hayd are present. Even if they're very less, but they are present. Another question. A woman did not have her period for almost a year. She went up for a hike on a mountain, and then she came back, and she felt her menstrual cramps, and she started bleeding. Hayd. She's going through menopause. She didn't have her period for an entire year, but it's the usual signs of her period. So she will consider that to be her period. Okay? Do you have any question? Yeah, you don't have them. She stopped taking them, and now that her cycle's coming back, it's messed up. When you're taking the pills, it comes on just certain days only. But when you go off of them, your body is readjusting. So because of that, the period will also be affected. Right? Hormones, exactly. Any other question?
The sign is clot, right? But the istihada doesn't have clot.
No. Istihada has big clots.
But the eyes are also?
Hayd, it's different kind. It can come in clots, but it's different. It can be like thick, mucousy. But istihada, the clots, if a woman sees them, she knows that this is something not normal. Any other question? Yes, Ali?
A child gets a period, like 6-year-old child. Is that still a period?
I don't know.
Because I know somebody who had that, and they said that the doctor said it's because of the food they eat, like the hormones in the food. That's what caused them a period.
Yeah, if the doctor is saying that it is a period, then it is a period. Because even newborn girls can have. She's 6 years old and she has started her period. Regular. And the doctor said this is period. Then it's period. Because, again, your diet affects you, your hormones, right? They affect you. So a woman can become baligh at 6 years of age as well.
The big cloth that you said, is it different color with hayd and different color with istihada or not? Or is it
Yes,
both?
the color is also different. Because for hayd, the color is darker.
Yeah.
And for istihada, the color is lighter. And if the clots are accompanied by thin blood, okay, like thin blood and then clots in the middle, then that is istihada. The blood of hayd is thicker in general. It is thicker in general. So you may see, some blood that looks like clots, but it's not actually clot. Okay? It's the uterine wall that's basically coming off. So it looks mucousy, but it's not actually a blood clot. Bab al-mar'ati tahidu ba'da al-ifada. A woman who starts her hayd after ifada, meaning after tawaful ifada. Now, tawaful ifada is also known as tawaf ziyarah. Yes, tawaf ziyarah. Okay, not widar. Widar is the farewell one. Tawaf ifada, tawaf ziyarah, same thing. And it is rukn a'zam of Hajj. It's the major pillar of Hajj. Meaning, without it, Hajj is incomplete. If a person does not perform tawaf ifada, their Hajj is incomplete. Now, if a woman begins her period after tawaf ifada, what does that mean then? That she has completed all the major arkan of Hajj. Now she starts her period. But before she leaves Makkah, what does she have to do? Tawaf al-wida'. The farewell tawaf, right? She has to do that. So, if she started her period after ifada, before wida', what is she supposed to do? Does she have to wait until she becomes clean and then perform tawaf wida' and then leave Makkah? Or can she leave Makkah without performing tawaf al-wida'? So basically the question is that is tawaf al-wida' mandatory? حدثنا عبد الله بن يوسف أخبرنا مالك عن عبد الله بن أبي بكر بن محمد بن عمرو بن حزم عن أبيه عن عمرة بنت عبد الرحمن عن عائشة. See عمرة بنت عبد الرحمن. عن عائشة زوج النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنها قالت لرسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم, that she said to the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, يا رسول الله, O Messenger of Allah, إن indeed صفية بنت حيي قد حاضت. She has started her period. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم, so the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, he said, لعلها تحبسنا. Perhaps she will delay us. تحبس from حبس, meaning we will have to wait for her period to be over, and then she will have to do her tawaf, and only then we can leave Makkah. And then he said, ألم تكن طافت معكم? Did she not do tawaf with you? Which tawaf is he referring to? Tawaf ifada. He said, perhaps she will delay us because she has to perform her tawaf, because he thought that she had to perform tawaf ifada. So then he asked, that, did she not perform the tawaf already with you? فَقَالُوا بَلَى. So they said, yes, of course. قَالَ, he said, فَخْرُجِي. Then leave. Meaning then you can leave Makkah. Tawaf wida' is not mandatory. But tawaf ifada is mandatory. Now there is a question. If a woman starts her period before ifada, and that happens, so what is she supposed to do in that case? Okay, she has to wait for her hayd to be over, then she will perform her tawaf, and then she should leave Makkah. But what if she cannot stay? What if she has her period for 10 days, and she's supposed to leave Makkah within the next 5 days? So, she has two choices. That's what the majority scholar said, that she has two choices. The first choice is that she will remain in her ihram, because she hasn't had tahallul thani, right? She hasn't come out of complete ihram. Tahallul thani is after this tawaf ifada. So, she will stay in her ihram until she's able to return. So for example, she lives in Saudi, she lives in Dammam, flight is from Jeddah to Dammam, so she says, okay fine, I'll go, I don't want to miss this flight, my children are at home, I should go, next weekend I'll come back with my brother and do my tawaf. So until that next weekend, she's in her ihram, okay? Until she can return and do her tawaf. But this is difficult. So what's the next option? The next option that she has is that she is like muhsara. In the Quran, what do we learn? وَأَتِمُّ الْحَجَّ وَالْعُمْرَةَ لِلَّهِ. Complete the Hajj and Umrah. فَإِنْ أُحْصِرْتُمْ. But if you are prevented, meaning some reason, and you're not able to complete the Hajj, you're not able to complete the Umrah, then what should you do? You should offer sacrifice and come out of the state of Ihram. So that's what she will do. She will offer sacrifice, she will come out of the state of ihram, but her hajj is not complete. Okay? Her hajj is not complete. So the miskina will return home without her hajj being complete, and her obligation still remains. Okay. Now this is also extremely difficult. Now these days, okay, you have to take a flight across the continent and you have to go there. But you have to pay thousands of dollars. It's not easy. And for people back then, they had to travel for months and months to go do hajj. So basically the journey to hajj is not an easy one. Now a woman has that physical strength, she has the financial means, or she may be able to have the financial means, maybe in the next 10 years or so, but it's not guaranteed. Or it's not possible for her to return again and again. She came with so much difficulty this time. How is it possible for her to come again? The hajj is not easy. It is quite challenging. It is quite difficult. So, Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, he said that she will do tawaf in that state after she can ensure that her blood will not contaminate the masjid. Okay, so she has to ensure that the blood will not contaminate the masjid, and then she can go and do tawaf. Why? Because this is an allowance that will actually create ease, that will facilitate for her, and this is what we see of the maqasid of the sharia, the masadir, the reasons why certain allowances are given is to create ease and facilitation for people. But remember that this is an allowance for who? An exception for who? For a woman who is not able to come back, who doesn't see in the near future that she'll be able to come back. A woman is aged, let's say, or she lives in a country from where getting a visa or getting the means to go for hajj is very difficult, or it is extremely expensive, and given the financial situation that she's in, it's not possible for her to do that. Okay, so this is an exception only in her case. And this should not be generalized. It should not be generalized, meaning every woman should not take advantage of this exception. So for example, a woman who lives in Saudi, for her it's not difficult at all. I mean, yes, they have a limit to the number of hajj they can perform every few years, but still, she can come maybe in the next 5 years, maybe the next year she can come. So she should not do this. Okay, likewise, a woman who is able to return to Makkah frequently. Let's say her family, they go for hajj every few years. They go again and again for umrah. So she says, instead of going umrah next Ramadan, I'm going to go for hajj, so I can do my hajj. Or let's say there's a woman who is able to perform hajj and perform umrah again and again. She is able to. But every time she comes for hajj, this happens with her. And actually, I've met a lady who said this to me. She has the financial means, she has the physical strength, but it's happened with her a number of times because she's going through her stage of life where the periods are irregular, and hajj, there's so much physical exertion. So that itself can cause some women to have their period. Yeah, if you can do that, if it's not a cause of concern, if the doctor says it's okay for you, then she can do that. Okay, she can take medication to ensure that her period will not come. But if it's really going to have an effect on her body, she doesn't wish to disturb her cycle, she can have problems in the future, then she should stay away from that. Okay?
The possibility of doing it, but if someone in that case is worried because no one can guarantee that they're going to leave until the next Hajj.
Exactly.
So can she perform her ifada in that state, and if she comes back?
See, there should be a reason to have that fear.
Okay.
Because let's say she's sick, or she is getting older and older, so she has this fear that she might not be able to make it. When you have the intention to come back and do it, then Allah will accept that, inshallah.
A lot of the times when we are planning to go for Hajj, we don't actually think about this. When we were going, we did a coach seminar, and Shaykh Muhammad Sharif was saying that it's something natural that Allah has given us. So there is also allowances and all these things. But at the same time, when we choose a package, we should make sure it has that many days, that if na'uzubillah you did get your period, then it doesn't fly off. They're not returning the next day
after. Exactly.
So that is something very important that we should look. And I was just going to mention about birth control. When I was doing Hajj, there were ladies whose single daughters were taking it. And subhanAllah, some of them still got it, even though they were taking it. So it's unpredictable.
Yeah.
And
it's not guaranteed.
Yeah, and the last point, like, when you leave, you're in ihram. A lot of people don't know, but if you have the intention to come back, you're still in ihram. You cannot be intimate with your spouse.
Exactly.
So these ladies, they were like getting their daughters married, and like I was embarrassed, but I had to tell them. I'm like, look, auntie, you're gonna get her married. She's gonna be in ihram, because that's the option she was going for. That she will eventually come back with her husband. She's single right now. And I'm like, do you know about this? So it's like, we need to really get educated about Hajj, and subhanAllah, it's something natural that happens, but we should be prepared. Like, for example, I remember when I went, I was expecting my period. So I actually rushed it, like as soon as there was time to do it, because it is 3-4 days, right?
Yes.
So if you know you're going to get your period, you do it right away. Don't wait the next day.
Yes.
Do it right away. Don't be in that boat, like if you haven't gotten your period. Yeah.
Perform tawaf ifadah as soon as possible. Tawaf ifadah, if missed and a woman intends to come back and do it within the days of Dhul Hijjah. Okay? Either that same year or the next year, but until she does it, she is in the state of ihram. Okay? Yes, if she intends to just delay her ifadah until she's clean and she can come back, then she is in that ihram, because she hasn't had tahallul thani. So that means she cannot have intimate relations with her husband, but tahallul awal was done, which is why she can trim her hair and nails. And if that is difficult for her, which is very difficult, then what should she do? Offer sacrifice, come out of the state of ihram, and repeat the Hajj all over again, whenever possible. And if that seems very unlikely, then what should she do? Perform tawaf in her hayd, after making sure that the blood will not contaminate the masjid. For example, a woman, she says, next week I'll come back with my brother and do my tawaf, and next week something else happens, and she's okay, next weekend, and it keeps getting delayed, and she's like, this is not working out. So what should she do? Come out of ihram, wherever she is, but have the sacrifice done. Okay? She can have it done over there. Exactly. She can appoint someone to do it for her. حدثنا محلى ابن أسد قال حدثنا وهيب عن عبد الله بن طاووس عن أبيه عن ابن عباس قال he said رخص للحائض أن تنفر إذا حاضت. رخص, a rukhsa, an exception was made, allowance was given for who? For the haid, for the menstruating woman, أن تنفر, that she can leave إذا حاضت, when she begins her period. Meaning he said this concerning tawaf al-wada', that if she's not able to perform tawaf wada', then she can just leave. And this exception is for who? This permission is for who? For the menstruating woman. So she may leave without performing tawaf al-wada'. One question about tawaf ifadah. Can someone else do it on her behalf? I mean, Rami al-Jamal, you can appoint someone to do it, right? So what about tawaf ifadah? No, you can't. You have to do it yourself. وكان ابن عمر, and Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu, يقول, he used to say, في أول أمره, in the beginning of his matter, meaning earlier on, his opinion was what? إنها لا تنفر, that she's not allowed to leave. She has to wait until her period is over, she becomes clean, then she does tawaf wada', and only then she can go. This was his opinion. And if she's not able to stay, then she will come out of the state of ihram, offer sacrifice. Her hajj was incomplete. This was his opinion. ثم سمعته, and then I heard him, the narrator is saying, يقول, he was saying, تنفر, that she can leave. So he changed his opinion. Why? Because إن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم رخص لهن, because the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم allowed for them. So what do we see over here? That Ibn Umar changed his opinion when he learned the hadith of the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم. So this should be our way as well, that if we find out about the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that proves something, then even if we believed something, practiced something that was different before, then we should change our opinion according to the instruction of the Prophet ﷺ. Imagine Ibn Umar being a companion. I mean, he changed his opinion as soon as he found out. Right? Now, there's a question. If a mujtahid, for example, Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu changed his opinion. Before he changed his opinion, he must have told someone that no, you have to wait until you're clean, and if that's not possible, then you have to come out of ihram, your hajj is incomplete. But later on, he found out that there's an exception. So is he responsible for what happened before? Is he supposed to go find that person and tell them? Is he supposed to pay them for the sacrifice that they made that was not required, or the hajj that they repeated that was not required? Are they supposed to make up for it? No. That when you do tell someone about something, then, which is why at the end of every fatwa, what do you read? Wallahu a'lam. Allah knows best. Which means that our statement is not the final one. There may be something out there that we don't know of that is more correct. But the point is that if a mujtahid changes his opinion, then he doesn't need to make up for the mistake that happened before. Why? Because that was based on his firm understanding and belief. And also one more point. If the companions did not know about all of the ahadith, then how can we expect that the scholars after them knew about all of the ahadith? If they were prone to making mistakes, then anyone after them can, right? But we think all of the Sahih ahadith have been collected, have been classified, they're in Bukhari, in Muslim, in al-Sittah, or in the collection of Albani. But there's still people researching more and more today and finding out that there are more ahadith out there. Exactly. They're not that old. Bab إِذَا رَأَتِ الْمُسْتَحَاضَةُ الطُّهْرَةُ. When a mustahada woman, a woman who experiences istihada, when she sees at-tuhr, when she sees the signs of purity. Now for a woman who experiences istihada, what is tuhr for her? Tuhr basically is time outside of hayd, right? So tuhr for her is when she is not having hayd, even though she may still be seeing blood. So tuhr for the mustahada woman is not just dryness or qussatul bayda, it can still be blood. Okay, but that blood is different. That blood is not the blood of hayd, it is the blood of istihada. So when she sees tuhr, basically, when she's not having her hayd, in other words, even though she is bleeding, what is she required to do? Meaning, is she supposed to start praying immediately? Is she supposed to pray at all? Can she have relations with her husband? What is permissible for her and what is not permissible for her? This is what the question is. قال ابن عباس. Ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhu, he said, تغتسل. She will take a bath when she sees tuhr, meaning when her hayd is over, even though she sees blood. When her hayd is over, تغتسل, she will take a bath, وتصلي, and she will pray, وَلَوْ سَاعَةً, even if it is for an hour. What is for an hour? The sign, the state of purity. So for example, a woman has her hayd. She became clean. She saw the signs of purity. Let's say she had complete dryness and she takes a bath, she starts praying. Now after an hour, she starts bleeding again, but that blood is different. It's thin, it's just flowing constantly, doesn't have any smell, no cramps, nothing. So her bleeding has begun. But that bleeding, the second bleeding, is not of hayd, it is of istihada. So even then, she is going to pray. She's going to continue praying. If she has her cycle for 7 days, she doesn't have istihada generally, within the 7 days, she sees the blood, that blood looks like menstrual blood, she will consider it to be menstrual blood. But if it's not usual, it doesn't look like menstrual blood, then it will be istihada. So he said that she will take a bath and she will pray, even if she's clean only for an hour. Another way in this walau sa'a has been understood is that even if there is only 1 hour left, for what? For that salah. So for example, she becomes clean at the time of dhuhr, just a little while before asr, and she takes a bath and there's a little bit of time left before asr, she has to pray immediately. Likewise, she becomes clean, she sees the signs of purity, and there's an hour left for dhuhr. What should she do? Take a bath immediately and pray. Not, dhuhr is almost over, so forget it. I'll just take a bath at asr time and then I'll pray. Or I'll take a bath at night and I'll pray isha. No, she has to pray dhuhr, she has to pray asr, she has to pray maghrib and isha. When? When she sees the sign of purity. وَيَأْتِيهَا زَوْجُهَا إِذَا صَلَّتْ. And when she is praying, meaning when she has started praying, once she knows that she has become clean, it's not hayd anymore, even though she's seeing blood, but that blood may be istihada, then her husband can come to her. As-salatu a'zam. As-salah is greater. What does this mean? This means that she can only resume sexual relations after performing the salah. Why? Because salah is greater, more urgent, far more important. So let's say there's only an hour left for asr to end, for dhuhr to end. She takes a bath. She has to pray first and then do other things. Another understanding of the statement is that based on the statement, Imam Bukhari is doing qiyas that when it becomes permissible for a woman in istihada to pray, okay, so a woman who has istihada, when she starts to pray, then it is permissible for her to have relations with her husband as well. What's the evidence? That as-salatu a'zam. Salah is greater. So if she's allowed to pray, Even when she's bleeding, then she is allowed to have relations with her husband, even when she's bleeding, provided that that blood is of istihada. And it is known that the mustahada prays, she prays fard, she prays nafil, she prays sunnah. So, it is also permissible for her to have relations with her husband. حدثنا أحمد بن يونس عن زهير قال حدثنا هشام عن عروة عن عائشة قالت, she said, قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا أقبلت الحيضة فدع الصلاة. That when the hayd begins, then leave the prayer. وإذا أدبرت, and when it leaves, فاغسلي عنك الدم وصلي. Then wash away the blood from you and start praying. So basically, when the blood of hayd is there, then no prayer and no relations. When the blood of hayd is gone, then prayer as well as relations. Even though she's seeing blood, yes, provided that blood is of istihada. Because for a mustahada woman, she's constantly bleeding, right? Bab as-salati ala nufasa'i wa sunnatiha. As-salati, the prayer, ala nufasa'i, upon the nufasa. Nufasa, plural of nafisa, a woman experiencing postnatal bleeding. So after birth, the bleeding that she experiences. So as-salat, prayer on her. Wa sunnatiha, and its sunnah, meaning the masnoon way of performing it. In other words, if a woman dies while she is having nifas, then how will the salah be prayed on her? Can the salah be prayed on her, by the way? And why not? Okay. But some people, they said that a dead body is najis, and especially if a woman is menstruating, there's blood coming out, there's najasa coming out, that is impure. So if you touch the body, your wudu breaks, right? And if a woman is bleeding, then she's unclean. So do you pray on her salatul janazah? That was a question that was raised once upon a time. And there are people who may raise this question today as well. So Imam Bukhari proves that yes, you have to pray janazah on such a woman. And what's the way of performing it? That's what we find out from the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. حدثنا أحمد بن أبي سريج قال أخبرنا شبابة قال أخبرنا شعبة عن حسين المعلم عن ابن بريدة عن سمرة ابن جندب أن that امرأة, a woman, ماتت في بطن, that she died في بطن. What does it mean by في بطن? Batn is the stomach, right? So في بطن has been understood in a number of ways. First of all, due to batn, meaning due to pregnancy. So in other words, she was still pregnant. And she died in that state. She's not bleeding, but she was pregnant. Secondly, fi batnin means due to childbirth. So for example, the labor or the postnatal bleeding, it was, if for example she had a hemorrhage, the bleeding would not stop, and as a result she died. Or she gave birth, everything was fine, and while she was still having postnatal bleeding, she died in that state. So ماتت في بطن. فصلى عليها النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. So the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, he prayed the janazah on her. فقام, and how did he pray? فقام, so he stood وسطها, the middle of her body, meaning the opposite of the middle of her body. Because for a man, the imam stands by the head, across from the head. But for the woman, across from the middle of the body. So this is the sunnah. So this proves that the woman who is experiencing postnatal bleeding, her body is not najis. Even if blood is coming out excessively from her body, yes. Because sometimes it's a lot of bleeding. Like for example, if a woman has a hemorrhage, it's a lot of bleeding. Constantly she's bleeding, bleeding, bleeding. It's uncontrollable. There's no menstrual pad, nothing at all that can control that bleeding, that can actually contain that blood. There's so much bleeding. So she has died even, but still maybe the blood is coming out, or it's possible, right? So her body is not unclean. She will be prayed upon. Next, bab. Now the tarjuma, there's no chapter heading that has been given. What does that mean? That this is a further explanation of the previous. Further elaboration of the previous point. حدثنا الحسن بن مدرك قال حدثنا يحيى بن حماد قال أخبرنا أبو عوانة اسمه الوضاح من كتابه, from his book. What does it mean? What does it mean? That this person, Waddah, he read out this hadith from where? From his book. meaning he read it out from his book. Some hadith scholars, they would narrate from their memory. Other hadith scholars, what would they do? They would have their students read, right? They would have their students read. And sometimes they would read from their own collection. So min kitabihi, he read from his own collection. He had written in that, قال, he said, أخبرنا سليمان الشيباني عن عبد الله بن شداد قال, he said, سمعت خالتي, I heard my khala Maymuna. How many generations between a companion of the Prophet ﷺ and the book? Waddah, he had written in his book, right? From who? Sulaiman, عن Abdullah, قال سمعت خالتي. There's two people in the middle. So very soon we see that the scholars started writing their collections. So he said, سمعت خالتي ميمونة زوج النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنها كانت تكون حائضا لا تصلي. That she would be حائضا, she would be menstruating and she would not be praying at that time. And وهي مفترشة, she would be lying down sitting on بحذاء, at the hida. What is hida? The place of prayer. Masjid, masjid meaning the place of sajda, of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, وهو يصلي على خمرتي. And he would be praying on his khumrah. What is khumrah? Khumrah is shawl. So basically, he would be praying and she would be right where he was praying, right at that spot or right by that spot. She'd be lying down or sitting. And إِذَا سَجَدَ, when he would prostrate, أَصَابَنِي بَعْضُ ثَوْبِهِ, some of his garment would actually touch me. You know, imagine somebody is praying and you're lying down right next to them. So as you bow down, as you go into sajda, and your clothes touch the floor, they will also touch the person lying down or sitting next to you. Correct? So what does it show then? The Prophet ﷺ is praying. His clothes are touching a menstruating woman. And we know that a person who is praying, his clothes and his body should not touch any najasa. Okay? Which is why we see that if a baby's diaper is dirty, then a woman, if she knows that it's dirty, she should not hold that baby in prayer. So, the fact that the Prophet ﷺ's clothes would touch her during his salah proves that a menstruating woman's body is not unclean. In the previous bab, what was proven? That the nufasa, their body is not unclean. Over here we see that the ha'id, her body is also not unclean. It is tahir. So she can touch the place of prayer, she can touch the mat, and this is the reason why some scholars even allowed that she can go to the masjid, and some scholars even allowed that she can touch the Quran, according to one opinion. So where it is necessary, she can. Alright? Any questions? Yes.
Beyond the stage where the soul was there. So do you pray 2 janazah or 1?
Yes. You pray the janazah for the child as well.
Okay.
Both janazahs will be prayed for the mother as well as the baby, if the baby was mukhallaqa and the ruh was blown. So after 4 months, basically. Any other question?
It's not a question, it's just a comment, and it's very sad. I went to see my doctor this week, and she's a Muslim doctor, but she doesn't wear hijab, but she knows her deen. And she says, she was just talking, because whenever we go, we always talk generally about our families and whatnot. So she was telling me how sad it is that Muslim couples come to her asking for abortion. And she says, Amina, they are in full hijab, abaya, niqab. The husband has a beard and he's wearing a kurta. And I tell them, it's not allowed. They say, you don't know anything. They actually tell her she doesn't know because she doesn't wear a hijab. When I explained to them, they said, no, the ruh is not blown into the body yet, into the baby yet, so it's okay. She said, it's not okay. She said, I explained to them and they just don't listen. And she tells them clearly, I tell them, do not come to my office, please. But she said, I will give you one thing. You have the baby, and I will find another Muslim family who wants that child. And I will give that child to the family. Then one man actually told her, who will give the child away? She said, what? And who will kill the child then? He said, you can say you can't give the baby and you can kill the child? She said, what are you talking? She said, you know what, go home and think about it. When she told me this, I was thinking I should tell all the imams in the masjid to start giving this lecture in the khutbahs. Because this is something that should not be allowed. How can we Muslim parents be so ignorant? That we are actually telling a doctor to let us have an abortion. And she was so upset, she was actually in tears. And she said, Amina, this happens to me every day. She said, they are not educated, they don't seem to realize. And it's a sad situation. It's a very sad situation.
But imagine if janazah has to be performed, then, how can you go and kill?
Yes.
all these things in different scenarios, the tahor and haid and everything. For a young girl who's just, in that stage, beginning her menses, she doesn't know her body yet, she doesn't know what menses are really. How would you simply explain, just these things to them?
For a woman who has begun her menstruation?
For a young girl, like she's very young, is playful, doesn't really know her body that much yet. These stages, either she's tahor or not, she doesn't know this yet.
Yeah, it doesn't concern her. But I'm just saying that a little girl who does not have any period, she has.
Yeah, she just began.
Yeah, then it should be explained to her. Simplify it to say that either you see, when you wipe yourself, you see nothing. It's dry. That means you're clean. Or when you wipe yourself, you see clear discharge. That means you're clean. When you wipe yourself, you see color discharge, yellowish, brownish. Yeah, so you can summarize in the same way, right? And also remember that let young girls who have begun their periods have that confidence to be able to speak to you, to be able to approach you concerning this. Because, if they're not sure about when they're clean, when they're not clean, and they have you around and still they can't ask you, then what will they do when they grow up? Have open communication, basically.
I believe as a mother or Muslim in the community, we shouldn't be shy of that. We have to teach them through training. They can bring the first part to you and show it to you. Subhanallah, Sayyidatuna Aisha was getting that from the Muslim woman. So we shouldn't be shy to teach by doing it with them.
Exactly. And when a girl is nearing the age of her period, then she should be informed from before. Girls find out anyway. Through their friends, through their older siblings, they find out anyway. So it's better that you explain properly so that when it does happen, they know what has happened. I remember one sister, she told me that she had absolutely no idea. She had 4 brothers and her mother had never mentioned to her nothing. She said one day she started bleeding and she thought she was going to die, and she was collecting the blood to show to the doctor. She really thought she was going to die. She thought something serious had happened with her, and finally when her mother came, she told her about it and she found out that this is something normal. So first of all, this kind of ignorance is not good. And secondly, the kind of place and the time that we're living in, it's necessary that they find out the right way.
After March, it's the same. April is the same. Now, like after 16 days, she purifies, she again started. So the cycle is...
Yeah, it's possible the cycle is changing. As long as the characteristics of hayd are present, like she has those cramps, then it is considered hayd. But if those characteristics are not present, then it is not hayd.
Assalamu alaikum. Also, when we explain to the young girls, we have to tell them also this is private matter. We shouldn't share with others. Because I remember one sister, she told her daughter, she was 8 years old, and her dad came and the friend came. She said, Daddy, my mom, she told me this, and she was so excited and she's so scared also. So we have to tell them this is private matter.
Yeah, that you can talk to me about it, your older sister about it, but not everybody.
What about if the menstruation starts, like for a girl, for myself when it started, it just was a drop or two, and then a few months later, that's when it came. So what would that be? Just a drop or two. Like the first time I had it was just a few drops for one day, and then a few months later, I got my period. So
remember that principle that any natural blood that comes out without, any other cause, like no injury, nothing, then it will be considered hayd. Unless there is a reason to prove that it is istihada. So it is not istihada. Why? Because you're not bleeding constantly, first of all. Okay.
Yes. So I would have like for myself or for any
consider
other
that to be hayd.
Yeah.
When that's over, take a bath, even if that means after 1 day. Because remember, there is no minimum number of days for hayd.
I just want to say my experience on this hadith when you said that there was a woman, she was like really bleeding a lot, and then she died. I don't know, where did you mention it?
The hemorrhage, like if a woman has excessive bleeding and as a result of that she dies.
That is possible.
Yes.
It's because I had it after my second son, and it's like there were 6 women, they were putting this blue pads, just putting it and bring it to the garbage and bring it, it was like...
It's uncontrollable bleeding.
Hemorrhage
is uncontrollable bleeding, and it has to be dealt with immediately, otherwise the woman can actually die. Because basically, the uterus is not contracting. And there is like wounds inside the uterus, and that blood is coming from the body then. So actually the body is bleeding. It's not the placenta, it's not the internal wounds, but it's actually the blood that's coming out from the body. So it can lead to death. And these days, alhamdulillah, with the immediate medical care that can be given and procedures that can be done, it can be taken care of. But But in a case where it's not done, and a woman dies in that state, and she's still bleeding profusely, or she has bled so much, then janazah will be prayed upon her. Her body is clean. So inshallah, before we begin Kitab al-Tayammum, a couple of things from Hayd. Alhamdulillah, in Hayd we covered lots of things, from rulings regarding to Hayd, irregular menstruation, as well as istihada, as well as nifas. Now, when it comes to istihada, when it comes to Hayd, it's clear when it begins, when it ends, right? But when it comes to nifas, when does it begin? After childbirth. But at what point is a woman supposed to discontinue salah? Meaning, when she's in labor, at what point is she supposed to stop praying? Because many women are in confusion with regards to this. Some women think that as soon as they begin their labor pains, they stop praying. Other women think that as soon as their water breaks, they stop praying. Right? The thing is that you stop praying when you begin nifas. What is nifas? Blood. So when the bleeding begins, the bleeding of childbirth, that means nifas has begun. Whether the child has already been born or is in the process of being born, is about to be born, regardless of that. But once the woman begins to bleed, whether that bleeding is a lot or very little, that means that her nifas has begun. Now for some women, for example, at the time of labor, with the contractions there is also slight bleeding or spotting. That means their nifas has begun. For other women, they do not bleed at all until the baby actually comes out. So they stop praying at that time. So this means that a woman could actually be in active labor. She could be having her contractions literally a few minutes apart. Even then she's praying. That's different. Because like, for example, a membrane sweep, because of which there may be a little bit of bleeding, that's different. This is with labor pains. Alright? And also remember that, for example, for some women, 2-3 days before the baby is actually born, or let's say a week before the baby is born, they start bleeding. So even that's nifas. Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, he said, with regard to that blood which is seen 2 or 3 days before delivery, it is nifas. Because it is blood that comes out because of giving birth. So it is nifas just like blood that comes out afterwards. This is because pregnant women rarely see blood. But if a pregnant woman sees blood close to the time of delivery, it is obviously because of birth, especially if she's having contractions. So if the signs of labor are evident and the bleeding has begun, whether a little or a lot, then that means that it is nifas. There would be no need, because Umrah, you don't have to perform separate Umrah. And then if you have to perform Tawaf Ifada, you have to do it. Alright, that means you will have to wait anyway. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. I pray that Allah really gives us the true understanding of how this is, and may our nafs not come in between, preventing us from the correct understanding. May this really help us in performing our ibadah properly, with confidence, with sharh sadr, and may this knowledge be of benefit to us and also to those women who are around us, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.